are here today to talk about maximizing your learning tech stack. And we asked the question when you registered for this event, kind of what does it look like today for you? And it is all over the board. We've got people saying, what the heck is it? I have no idea what's going on, to, yeah, it's okay, it's doable, it works, all the way to we've got all the bells and whistles and everything. So we run the full gamut of I've got nothing, I have no idea what it is, to we've got everything. And I think today, based on the conversation that we're going to have, we've got a little something for everybody, whether you're ready to build some foundational knowledge, whether you're looking for improvement, or if you're really looking how to make your tech stack sing, we've got you covered today. So let's get started with what the heck is it? What is a learning tech stack? So Kev, I'll throw it over to you to respond to that.
Thanks, Kat, and hi, everybody. I appreciate you asking me on here today. I suppose in its most pure form, a tech stack is either a piece or a collection of technology that helps you achieve goals, essentially, right? And it's important to note, probably because we've got, exactly as you kind of identified there, a very wide range of people that have very different needs or different companies and are looking to solve for different things. For me, it's always critical to work backwards on what you're looking to solve for, which is how you can then build your tech stack. Broadly speaking, for most people on here in the conversations that we have here at Degreed, we kind of look at 2 or 3 sets of core systems that evolve into some form of tech stack. Now, each of these are designed in their build to solve for different challenges, right, and achieve different outcomes. And if we look at probably the most frequent ones that we have conversations of, they can be bucketed into various systems, right? You've got a system of record, right, which was built for a company. It's kind of command, it's control, it's compliance. Think of what a HR system might be, like a HRIS or a learning management system. You've then got probably systems of consumption, right? These could be various different content sources where you go to learn something or to solve a problem or a challenge that you're faced with. So they generate kind of good end user feedback. And then you have systems of engagement, and that's kind of where we sit. And that kind of sits in the middle of that kind of learning stack, whereas we're kind of consolidating some of those systems of consumption and providing data to those systems of record. Now, in an ideal world, to get a learning tech stack, what you want to do is have all of those various systems talk to each other, and that's where the magic happens. And that's where you can begin to develop kind of an effective ecosystem in helping to solve the challenges you're working towards.
Great, thanks for that, Kev. Ross, what would you add to that?
I think Kev did it all really. It's saved me the job of doing most of it. So yeah, look, I would just build upon that same. From a practitioner standpoint, I've always looked at it as technology choices to enable and empower your learning strategy. So it's very much about bringing that into not just your ecosystem of tech, but your ecosystem of people, resources, and technology. And that learning tech stack really should be helping you to amplify all that work that you're doing. It's not going to replace anything, although that may be different in a few years' time with AI, but it's most certainly there to help amplify all of that work you're doing and using it in a very intentional way.
Great. So to Kevin's point, it's really around 3 things, you know, a system of record, a system of consumption, system of engagement. And then Ross really clearly talking about how it should all ladder up and honor your learning strategy. All right. Well, what are the 3 questions to designing the perfect tech stack? Ross, I'll let you kick us off with that.
Yeah, so basically this is my process that I've used over the last decade at enterprise organization startups and scale ups. So feel free to steal this. You know, you can take this and use it in your own organization. So what I always did with my teams is, regardless if we were looking to create a new learning tech stack, or if we were looking to, you know, clean up what we've got, because we all know sometimes it can be pretty crowded. There's too much tech going on, and it can be really confusing for the end users and for the people administrating the tech too. So what I'd always invite you to look at is, what's in your current stack now? So what is in that current tech stack that you can look at and say, you know, what is performing for us here, and maybe what is not performing? And then we want to look at, what problems do you need to solve? Now, the reason why I say this is because I think it's very easy for all of us, even in our personal lives, to see something shiny and new and amazing, which is coveted with marvelous marketing. And then we're like, we need it in our lives. Like, this thing will solve all our issues. And we don't really do too much investigation. We kind of get swayed away with, oh my God, we need to buy this thing now. It's like, what problem is that going to solve in your organization? You shouldn't be making any learning tech decisions or purchasing any technology unless it solves a specific problem that you have in an organization. And we'll talk more about that through this as well. And then lastly is, what are your non-negotiable features? So again, this comes very closely to not only the problems, but what are the things that you really need? And the reason why I say that is because we all know from our relationship technology, there's a lot of bells and whistles out there, right? And generally it will be, we do these 100 things, but you just need 3 things. So be really clear on what are those 3 things that are non-negotiable for you in any piece of your learning tech, and make sure you keep those in mind. So that is what I've always used, as I say, with my teams and organizations, to get clarity on, what is that perfect tech stack for what we're going to focus on.
Great. Thanks for that, Ross. How about you, Kevin? What do you say?
Yeah, again, kind of Ross has hit the nail on the head here. And when we look at this 3-point step program, right, I kind of see point 2. If you start with point 2 and then you go to point 1, just flipping them around, hopefully what you should identify as point 3, right? So that's the answer to 2 and 1. And when you're thinking this through the practitioner lens, such as Ross has done for many years and supported other people in doing it, so we're living in an age now whereas access to tools, to technology, to information is more abundant than it's ever been, right? We are now needing to operate on doing fewer things, but doing them far better. Ross used the phraseology earlier on of bells and whistles, and I think we've seen that a lot over the past 5 to 7 years or so in terms of learning technology as a whole. Previously, we come from a point where it's like it was very structured. There weren't too many systems, but they're all operating in a similar area. Whereas now there's kind of very blurred lines that operate between all of these technologies. So I think it's really, really important to work backwards from what you're seeking to achieve, understand what that is, and then you can build towards it. So I think this framework of like understanding what you've got and what's working for you, how are you measuring that, and how is it achieving to drive business performance or help deliver what you're looking to do, and then kind of understand, right, here's where we can add to it. And you've always got to be looking, add in further value. It's pointless bringing any technology into something that's either going to confuse an experience or add further kind of complexity where it's just not required.
Yeah, such a good point of not muddying the waters and making it tougher to achieve the impact that you're looking to make. So really what I heard from the both of you is getting really crystal clear of what are the problems that you're trying to solve, kind of starting with the end in mind of what would good look like, what would great look like, and then what is the technology that is going to unlock you to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're just speeding right along. So you kind of touched on this a little bit, Ross, best of breed, all-in-one solution in alignment to the strategy. With the bells and whistles, I think oftentimes we get swayed by, ooh, it can do this and it can do that. And Kevin, you've got a really great happening with something at home that you recently purchased. If you want to share a little bit about your air fryer.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like when we met to discuss what we was going to chat at today, this naturally came out in conversation because it really kind of hit on the theme of what Ross was just touching on there. And what I try and always do is think of like consumer habits, right? Because in my personal experience, this translates into human behavior. And if we can understand that human behavior, we might be able to support it a little bit better in anything and everything that we do. So it's what I call the air fryer example, which is about a year or so ago, I spent some time with kind of a family friend who had an air fryer. And it was that period where everybody was buying air fryers. It was hitting my Instagram feed, my TikToks and everything like that. I was being hit from every different angle about it. And at the outset of it, I had a real clear understanding of what I needed. And it was very value heavy, right? I've got a very young daughter. I wanted something that would help me get dinner quickly for her with a bit busy lifestyle. So saving time. Whilst at the same time with the rise in energy bills, saving me money, right? Not having an oven on for an hour or whatever it may be. So I decided I wanted an air fryer, and then I do probably what a lot of us do, right? I then started to go and research it. And that research, I spoke to people who had air fryers. I went on the internet. I looked at like Good Housekeeping, BBC this, and all the various different kind of lists as to kind of the best air fryers that was out in the market. And as I was doing that, what I noticed is I started to get really distracted by various feature and functionality. And all of a sudden I saw an air fryer that had 11-in-1 functionality, right? I could do roasting, I could do grilling, I could do slow cooking, I could do pressure cooking, all these various different things, which at the time was like, that's amazing. That's the one that I'm going to go out and get. It was incredibly cleverly marketed by the vendors, by the suppliers, which distracted me from my core buying reason. Now, of course, being the consumer purchaser that I was, I went and bought the 11-in-1 instead of sticking to like kind of my core area of what I was looking to do. But what I very quickly understood and noticed once I'd purchased that, I never really used any of that functionality. Why? Because at home, I had a barbecue to do my slow roasting and my grilling. I had an oven to do my cooking. I had a pressure cooker to do my pressure cooking, right? And each of those did those things better than having something that tried to do everything all in one. So what I've kind of noticed, or what I thought back in doing that, is I look at how I use my air fryer and I use one piece of functionality for it, which is air frying, right? Which goes back to saving money and saving time, which is great. But now if I kind of not being distracted by that feature and functionality as I was going through that buying journey, I probably would have made a different purchasing decision at that time, which was maybe to have a bigger area that I could do my cooking in for the family or whatever it may be. So again, it's just holding ourselves to account as we go through that kind of buying process, or understanding what are we trying to get, and then what do we need to do to work back towards that. So again, like my sentiment for me, and certainly for us here at Degreed, is best of breed works best, right? But it's not right for everybody. Sometimes it might be better for an all-in-one solution because that's what's right for you. But you have to work backwards from understanding what you're looking to try and achieve with whatever you're doing. But that was definitely my experience with the air fryer story for sure.
I love that story because I think it's so relevant, because we get caught up in the, ooh, it could do this and it could do that. But if you aren't going to do this and that, why pay for the extra functionality? Ross, what are your thoughts on best of breed versus all-in-one?
Yeah, I think it's really like Kevin says. So it's really focusing on what you need. So what's the context in your organization? What's the context for your team? And there's many things that play into this, right? It's, you know, what technology you currently have, what budget do you have as an L&D team? How easy is it to integrate technology that you've already got? And one of my things has always been, when I'm building these ecosystems with companies, is I would rather work with a select group of individuals who do one or two things really well, like they're exceptional in their field, rather than going somewhere else and having a bit of tech that does 30 things, but to a pretty mediocre level, and it's not really going to hit the mark. But again, as Kevin says, you know, context is king in all of this, because depending upon where you are, how many people you have to serve, an all-in-one solution might be the thing that's really going to help serve what you need at that point. So it's definitely, you know, taking away what we're saying, but applying it to your actual environment and making sure you make the right decisions for, you know, those people there. And look, that will evolve. There's some companies I've worked at that started with an all-in-one solution. Then they moved to best of breed, and I was like, okay, that doesn't work now. So now we're going to go to an all-in-one solution because we have way more people. So it's very much about, you know, flexing. You flex that approach and, you know, that time where you are and how the organization is as well.
I think I'd just add to that, Kat, as well. Another thing that I've noticed recently in conversation, right, is certainly in the industries that we work, we get a lot of RFPs, right? So we get to see a lot of RFPs and the proposals that are being built. And thankfully for us, we get to have conversations before receiving those RFPs. So hopefully we get a good understanding of what an organization is looking to try and achieve, like that kind of drive their business performance. And then we get to see kind of the requirement that they've built out that's been developed to try and achieve that. Certainly what I've noticed over the past 12 to 18 months or so, and I think that's because of the explosion of technology and kind of the blurred lines that sits between it, is now there seems to be a delta between what people are looking to try and achieve and what they expect the technology to do to help them achieve it. And again, I just as guidance to the community, right? It's when you're going through building those requirements, it's just as important internally to work with your team to really understand kind of, right, this is what we want to achieve and this is how we're going to achieve it. And again, it's that working backwards, that framework that Ross hit on earlier, because at the moment, if there's like a significant gap or delta between the two, all of a sudden you're going to be analyzing or looking at things that's actually not going to be helping you achieve what you want to achieve. So we've got to close that gap in one way, shape or form. And hopefully that's done through an effective learning tech stack.
Great. Thank you for that addition, Kev. So somebody popped in a question, and I think we've got just a bit of time to answer it. How does UX play a role in respect to best of breed versus all-in-one, and how do you consider that balance?
You want me to take that?
Sure. It's up for grabs between you and Ross.
I think it definitely does play a role, right? And I think it is a balancing act. In my sense, again, I go back to like the consumer behavior in terms of how we act as humans, and then hopefully in developing or delivering like a super helpful or valuable user experience, what you're creating is a sense of desire, intrigue, value, curiosity for somebody to continue to return to within that learning stack because they choose to rather than because they have to. Right. And I think if we can get to that point, and it's kind of mirrored in a lot of the social platforms that people use in their everyday life at the moment, what that's naturally going to do is going to give the organization or the business various kind of insight that they can then leverage to drive towards various kind of business performance or business goals or business measures. I'm always kind of user first in everything that I do. So I think focus on that UX, focus on that user experience, and then naturally everything else will come off of that.
Great. And I see you guys are starting to pop in more questions, which is fantastic. Please continue to do that. I'm not sure we're going to be able to get to all of them in this very quick fireside chat format. But thank you for popping that in there, Matthew, but please keep them coming. So really what I heard in regards to best of breed versus all-in-one, context is king. And it's situational, maybe not. It could be you go one way and you play it out and then you make a decision and maybe go the other way. So it's very situational is what I'm hearing. And then the learner should be at the center of your decision in regards to best of breed or all-in-one. All right. We also, oops, that is my cute little daughter. We've got a 5-step framework to help you build your tech stack today. And I think this is great. Ross, if you want to take this and walk us through your framework, because it hits on some of the things that we've already talked about.
Yeah, 100%. Like I said before, feel free to steal, friends. This is all good stuff for you to take away here and use in your own organizations. So if we work from my right-hand side, as I look at this screen here and take you kind of through this process from 1 to 5, this is how my thinking works with my own L&D teams when I've done this, and C-suite members as well. So building on what we've already said, so the first part of the process here is to do our research. So going back to the problems we need to solve. We shouldn't even be looking at tech or talking about tech until we actually understand what are the performance issues in the organization. Once we've captured that, then we can move on to this next step, which is assessing. So assessing is really important. And that goes back to what I was saying before about looking at your current tech stack and resources that are available to you today. You know, do you already have something in there that you're not maximizing? And an analogy I use often is that as humans, we only use about 10% of our brain power. So there's 90% there doing absolutely nothing. And I think about that with technology, and going back to the bells and whistles format is that a lot of these pieces of technology do so much stuff, you're probably not using them as much. And if we take 2 examples from my day to day, so you might be a Microsoft Teams user, you might be a Slack user. I'm pretty sure, unless you're some kind of genius, you're only using those tools to about 10% of their capability. And it's probably for messaging, right? You probably say to people, I'll ping you on Slack, I'll ping you on Teams. But actually, there's about 60 different use cases for what those tools can do. So again, it goes back to really understanding, what do you have now and can you maximize that? So in the investigation portion here, we talk about, if you do have tech already, look how you can maximize that. Talk with your technology teams, talk with your infrastructure teams, or even look if it's an L&D tech solution, look at within the team how you can maximize that. If it's not, and you need something more, that's great. You've been able to validate that. But your first port of call is to do that research, do that assessment, and validate that before you go off and try and pour more stuff into your probably already bloated ecosystem, and then 6 months later go, oh, it's not working, so we need to buy more tech and throw it over the fence to do that. And then what we want to consider is, if you are going to buy something new, is talking about interoperability. And basically what this means is, how will any new piece of technology you are going to onboard into the ecosystem work with what you already have? Now, this is really important. There's lots of organizations have APIs and different integrations to work with existing HR tech and existing learning tech. Now, what you want to try to avoid is, and this is all contextual as well, is bringing something in that's just not going to communicate with the rest of your systems. And the reason why I say that is, with my practitioner hat on, what is very easy and smooth for myself and teams previously is having one source of truth, having data connected, the ability to track journeys. And that is something that's very important to understand from an interoperability standpoint, is whatever you bring in, how's that going to work with what we've got? And as it says here, is it going to enhance your ecosystem? So is it going to make it that, 5x better, or is it going to hinder it? And, sometimes I've been in positions where I've loved a piece of tech, but it's just not going to work with the ecosystem that we've currently got. And that's not to say that you can't engage with those individuals later, or you can't use that tech later on. And that is the kind of the beauty of the best of breed ecosystem, is that you can swap things out that work at different times. But it's been really kind of clear and cognizant of bringing in something that's actually going to enhance what you've already got. And then the last piece for me is test and learn. And I don't think enough companies do this, where they actually look at, how can we do a pilot with a learning tech vendor? How can we work with them to understand, what are our challenges? How can we, do a proof of concept for 3 months and really start to put this tool to the test to make sure it does fit for our organization? And the reason why I say that is, it's very easy behind closed doors in siloed conversations to get super excited and go through loads of stuff and think like, oh my God, this is the answer, that we're going to be saved here. But then you deploy it in the live environment, and there's all of these unknowns, and sometimes they do appear. And then what you're able to do is collect that data and validate everything that you've been doing, and then say, okay, one, hopefully it's good. If it's good, great. You crack on, you sign your deal, you have your tech, everyone's super happy, we're all celebrating. But if it's not, then you go back and try and figure out, okay, why is this not working? And then you find those points, and then you see what you can do there to resolve it. So for me, this is the 5-step framework that I do before buying anything. And it might feel to some people a bit long, that really depends contextually where you are and in what organization you're in. But I think this, with a bit of prep work and thinking up front, really helps you to maximize the partnerships that you build. And the reason why I say that is, I always talk to people about, looking for partners, not suppliers. Who are the people that you can work with over 5-10 year period? That's really, really important. And that's something we forget sometimes when we're blindsided by kind of shiny tech. So it's really taking all this into account, and then, looking at the organization saying, are these people that we can partner with long-term? We can grow with them, we can build this out. And, once you've done that, if you're happy, then, you can crack on, do your tech selection and bring them on board. So yeah, that'd be my process for you all.
Yeah, I love how succinct and clear this is, and especially around, talking about the performance issue with, your research of, thinking about, what is our problem? How will we know when we've solved for it? And what's the data that's going to prove that we've solved for it? So really getting clear about what's the data you're going to need throughout this journey to say, did we hit what we wanted to achieve. And I think sometimes getting really clear with your vendor of this is the information I'm going to need, because how many of you guys out there have partnered with a vendor and then didn't get what you needed on the back end to do your data analysis, to have that conversation, to be able to show ROI? And so true on test and learn. I was with an organization where they said they were piloting and they signed the deal like 3 weeks into the pilot. I'm like, what is happening? And then everything just kind of fell apart, but I digress. That's for another conversation. Kev, is there anything you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, I'll be very quick, just taking into consideration of time. But to anybody listening, this is the gold in today's meeting, right? I think Ross narrated through it really, really well. I'll add 2 or 3 just very, very quick points there. Vendors been spoken about a couple of times, and obviously I'm a vendor. Hold your vendors to account, right? Please, 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 please hold your vendors to account. If they can't show partnership, if they aren't able to describe that, support you with everything that you need, challenge you professionally in the right way and guide you through that process, then they're probably not the right people for you in what you're looking to do. So please, please hold your vendors to account. That's so, so important. Interoperability, I hate that word because it's so difficult to say, but I think it's so, so important, especially if you think of how quickly technology is changing at the moment, right? You need a tech stack that's going to evolve with you as an organization, not just for now. You've got to be thinking about 2, 3, 5 years. Remember, 6 months ago, ChatGPT wasn't even a thing, right? That's how quickly technology is going to be evolving, and you need something that's going to continue to connect and grow as you test and grow. And then I loved Ross's bit about optimizing the technology that you have at your disposal. Think about these things, your mobile phones, right? You probably use them for just 1 or 2 bits of the features that comes with them, whereas they've got so much more in there. And that's going to be like your tech stack. There's going to be so much power that you could harness if you understand. And again, you hold your vendors to account to help you harness that power that's embedded within that technology. So I love this framework, Ross, and I think it's super, super helpful and valuable for the audience who's on today.
Awesome. So we have just a few more minutes. Let's get into how do you sway your C-suite? What does that conversation look like? So I'll leave it to the 2 of you to chime in. We've got just a couple of minutes.
Go on, Ross, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, so look, this is the reason why I've put this in is because I cannot tell you how many conversations I have with people who are like, I've got all these grand plans and I want to take over the world. They have no idea how to sell this to senior leaders. They have no idea the story that they're going to bring to them. And it falls apart quite quickly. And that's a shame, right? So what I really want to bring to light here is that framework is one piece. Your next bit is actually going to your C-suite or wherever your senior stakeholders are and presenting that research. And I don't mean taking them through a 50-page PowerPoint deck and, putting them to sleep and they've probably forgotten everything that you've gone through by that point. What I mean is being very precise in what are the things they need to know, and then giving them recommendations in saying, okay, we've done all this research. These are the 5 things you need to know. These are the 5 things that are going to move the needle in our organization in the next 12 months. And in order to do that, we're going to need to do 1, 2, 3. And then what I would suggest you to do is propose the solution on how to do it. So based on our research, based on my recommendations, I think we should do 1, 2, 3, and this is how we'll do it. The reason why I say that is, I have to be honest, after 15 years of doing this, a lot of C-suite teams do not care about your tech and what you buy. They don't care about a lot of the bits that sit around that, the learning methodologies, the buzzwords. What they care about is return on investment. So what are you doing? How is that going to affect business growth? So if we give you X amount of investment now, how is that going to deliver for us throughout the year? So it's not just a monetary value, it's also a performance support value. So what is the impact from all of this work you're doing by the end of the year? And I mention that because, in L&D, there's always this conversation around having a seat at the table or having to get buy-in from people. The way to do that is to lead. So lead in the conversation with your research, with your recommendations, have your solutions, know what you're going to say in terms of how you're going to do this. So all the C-suite needs to do is say yes or no. There doesn't need to be massive amounts of information, more conversations. and just keep it very clear. If you keep it clear, if you present all the information, you give those solutions, I'm 99% sure you're going to have a better outcome than you may have had previously. So for me, at a very high level, that is how I'd recommend you get buy-in from your C-suite.
Great. So keep it clear and make sure that you're laddering up to the business objectives and showing return on the investment. Fantastic. Well, we are at time. We talked a little bit about Degreed. Thanks for coming to the party, Kev and Degreed team. Here's a high level of what they are up to. And come have a conversation. Next week is LT in London. I have serious FOMO being here in the US, but I know Kev will be there. Here are the booths, good stretch of the legs to get to us at Filtered on the other end. But come have a chat. And then if you have any questions, just keep throwing them in there. But I definitely wanted to throw it over to Chris Littlewood, who is our Chief Product Officer, who has a sneak peek of what we've been up to at Filtered. So Chris, I will throw it over to you, my friend.
Hello, everyone. Thanks very much, Kat. I'm feeling quite pleased with myself because I'm about to take some of Ross's advice, in particular on the test and learn front. So what I'd like to share is a prototype we've been building. We're going to talk a bit more about it at Learning Technologies, but I'll just spend a couple of minutes sharing it with you because we're keen to show what we're doing and most importantly, to get some feedback. One thing that we hear from customers is that Filtered is a massive help when it comes to curating content for, finding stuff that's going to be relevant for curation purposes, especially when it is in the sort of domain of expertise of the curator. So for L&D teams, then they're often very comfortable curating content around leadership, digital skills, knowledge worker skills in general. But if it's a more technical or specialist topic, then that can be much more tricky, even with the support of Filtered. So what we realized was that this was a great application of the GPT chat type technologies, because what we can do is use those big learning models to extend the knowledge of the curator. And we can help supplement that when they're at the sort of edge of their expertise and trying to find content that they may be not as familiar with as they might be. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen. Can everyone see? So imagine you're a curator, you've got to populate hundreds of playlists. Some of them you're looking forward to doing that job for, and others then you think you're going to need to draw on subject matter experts, etc. And it's tricky. What I'm showing here is how we can use what we call Search Plus to find content, even when the topic is an area that's just on the edge of expertise. So here then, I'll show you a live example in a second. And I should caveat that this is using our development server. So please bear with any rough edges. I didn't ask the team to stop work on it. So fingers crossed. So here then, imagine I'm looking for machine learning content. So I search for machine learning content. I get a set of suggestions of more defined topics, and I can use those to refine my search and focus exactly in on what is particularly relevant content rather than keeping things vague. So let me give you a live example. So like I say, this is dev, so it'll be a little bit slower than it will be in production, and there might be a few rough edges. So let's take leadership as an example, although I think most of our curators would be comfortable defining this tightly. So when I type leadership, then what we're doing here is we're leveraging ChatGPT. It's actually the GPT-4 model. It's the latest model, in order to build out an understanding of what that might mean. So leadership, obviously a very broad topic. So it's come back with some suggestions as to how I might want to break that down. So let's say, for example, I want to focus on emotional intelligence in leadership. And on the right hand side, what you can see here is straight away. Yeah, I did warn you that there might be a few glitches. Give me 1 second while I refresh.
While Chris is refreshing, I'm curious to know how many of you are content curators? How many of you are responsible for curating the learning content for your LXP? Or creating learning paths even? If you want to drop it into the chat.
So I can focus in. So I type a broad search term, and I get let's pick the same example again. And what this will do is refine and narrow the search term. And on the right hand side, what I've got is live recommendations from my learning catalog. So I'm using the power of the big language model to try and build a search term that's extremely precise and exactly what I need. But the results are grounded in my own learning catalog. So I've got that guarantee of quality and endorsement of the content. So you can see I've gone from my broad search term leadership, and now I've got stuff that's relevant to leading with emotional intelligence. So I'll say one more thing before I draw to a close. I know we're over time. So this is a way of sort of empowering curators to find an individual asset. We're building a parallel tool called Curate Plus, which does the same thing but populates a playlist. So here then you can imagine I might want to build a machine learning playlist. And what the tool will do is it will suggest topics that you should cover in that playlist to try and make sure that you're covering every base. And you can edit that, adjust that, and then get recommended content from your own learning libraries, etc. So like I say, we'll be sharing more at Learning Technology, and subsequently it's built in prototype. We're after feedback at this point in particular about whether it's hitting a value point for people. So thanks very much for allowing me to sort of extend the meeting a bit to share that, and hopefully catch up with some of you soon.
Great, thank you so much for that, Chris. And Ross summed it up, hyper-specific results for your work. So it's, if you don't have to spend your time digging through stuff, like what else could you be tackling in your world of laundry list of learning to-dos, right? All right, I think that is a wrap for us. Thanks for being here. Thanks for staying a little bit later. And for those of you that popped questions, we'll find a way to get those responded to, perhaps a blog or something of the sort to send out. But thanks so much, everybody, for being here, and hope to see you again soon.